Welcome back again to Joe Stunner Boxing. I hope you're doing well. I need to talk a little bit about Jarrell Miller. I made a video yesterday just sort of covering this arrest that he's faced, this charge of, or several charges of carjacking, assault and battery, that sort of thing. It's all new, it's all fresh. He's been arrested. But he is looking at prison time if he's convicted of these serious charges. So, I mean, go and have a look at the video if you want the details. I won't go over it all again. But the question that sort of hung in my head was, why did Jarrell Miller do this? If he did it, allegedly, of course. Man's innocent until proven guilty. The evidence does seem rather compelling. But why would a man who earned, I don't know how much he did earn for the Dubois fight, which was only a couple of weeks ago, who let's say he earned $2 million or $3 million. Why would someone who earned that sort of money get into a dispute which allegedly results in carjacking, assault and battery? Apparently there was a female acquaintance of Miller's involved as well. Why would he do all of this? The accusation is that he plot and planned it in order to retrieve this vehicle. When of course he could have just, let it go and bought another one. If someone's handing you a check for $2 or $3 million, even if it was only $1 million he's been paid, is his ego so vast that he feels he simply can't let it slide and he's got to get involved and do a little gangster routine? Look, all things considered, having thought about this, it's not surprising to me that Miller did do what he did, allegedly, because in the past, we know about his failed PED tests, and the amount of, it runs into millions that he's lost because of giving positive tests for performance-enhancing drugs. We all know he was about to fight Anthony Joshua. I don't know how much he was going to get, 6 million, something like that. And he failed that test. He then signed with Top Rank for what DMITRY SALITA, his promoter, said was, the fights were lucrative, not as much as the Joshua fight, which was a world title fight, but he would have been paid well. He blew that with another positive test. And then somehow he gets on this day of reckoning card and picks up a fat paycheck for that. Finally gets paid. Finally doesn't test positive for drugs. And then he finds himself in a whole an ocean of hot water. This is some serious stuff. He could go to prison, make no mistake about it. And even if he's going to be, he's obviously going to be spending a lot of that day of reckoning, the Daniel Dubois money, on top lawyers, I would presume, to try and at least get the charges boiled down with a plea deal to the point where even if he can't avoid prison, he's not doing years and years of it, because if he does, that's his career over with. Well, there are 2 points to make here, I think. One is that the guy has got a self-destruct button, which possibly does, like I said earlier, come from ego. But there's also that sense of entitlement, which seems to have been nurtured throughout his career, because he continually blows opportunities and then is given more opportunities. Therefore, why should he feel any sort of personal responsibility for his actions? You might be aware, I mentioned this briefly in the video I did yesterday, that he's also, just to sort of add to his woes, he's got a legal issue pending with DMITRY SALITA, his promoter, who, and I've watched interviews with SALITA and Miller. This was actually prior. I mean, the interview, the dispute goes back before the Day of Reckoning card, quite a bit before it, actually. And in fact, Miller on the top table was quite scathing about SALITA in front of everyone with Salita sitting near him. Salita's side, his argument is, well, I've been with Jarrell since very early in his career. I think it's his second fight. I've invested a lot of money in him. And when we finally get to the point where he can earn big money and I get paid as well, I get a slice of the cake, he's continually popping hot for drugs, and therefore he doesn't fight and doesn't get paid. So I, being the promoter, have lost potentially millions because of his failed tests. Okay, that's one side of the argument. The other side, coming from Miller, and Miller was far more scathing, far less diplomatic about Salita than the other way around. He said he doesn't like the guy anymore. He wants out. He's got 2 more fights in his contract left. Dubois fight was one of them. I want to get away from this guy. He doesn't pay me on time. During the time when he was in the wilderness, serving one of his bands, he said Salita didn't even contact him once. There was no sort of support. No, if you're being kind, you'd call it sort of emotional support. If you're being unkind, you might call it a massaging of the ego. So Miller feels this way, or he feels one way. Salita feels another. Yeah, I mean that relationship is finished, obviously. And Salita is, I believe, taking Miller to court for $5 million in lost revenue. So Miller has a whole hope. He doesn't know hope. He has a whole host of problems, and they seem to be piling up on him. But to allegedly get involved in something that can put you in prison for many, many years, I mean, that could really be the end of the guy. And some would argue, well, if he does end up in prison, it's poetic justice for all the shenanigans that have gone on throughout his professional career. And you know what? As much as I dislike Miller and as much as I have contempt for the way he's conducted himself on all those failed tests, during the Dubois fight, I found myself kind of respecting him more because he took that beating, that hellacious beating from a very heavy puncher in Dubois. A couple of dozen of flush punches, at least a couple of dozen. I'm not talking about being just tapped or hit. I'm talking about flush punches that would floor, maybe even knock out other fighters. He took them and he didn't go on the floor. He took his beating like a man, to use the old vernacular. And I think I found myself having a sort of begrudging respect for the man. He's got a hell of a jaw. I mean, Jesus Christ, the amount of punishment he was taking, it's unbelievable. But it has to be said that the guy has a self-destruct button, and I said before he fought Miller, before he fought Dubois, I said, this man, he displays all the traits of an addict, someone who needs something to hang all his neuroses on, whether it's drugs or some people choose drink, and some people. But when your ego is pumping away and you're blaming everyone else and you're not taking any personal responsibility, inevitably that type of thing leads towards bad behavior to different degrees. I mean, in the case of Miller, it's a very high degree, and it never ends well. It always ends in tears. So, in my opinion, I think Miller he might well be done now. I don't know. I said that before about the guy, but he keeps coming back. He's 35, though. I mean, if he only gets 2 or 3 years in prison for this, which is feasible, it's possible he'll get a lot more. Yeah, difficult, isn't it? Anyway, what do you think? As usual, leave your comments below. I'll read them. And thank you for your time. And please subscribe to the channel if you're new, and hit the like button if you don't mind, because they count the likes, apparently. And I will catch you later. Looking forward to reading your comments, and bye for now.